was involved in her high school marching band. Kelsey attended high school in Overland Park, and she graduated on May 24th, 2007. And this summer between high school and college is where our story takes place. So Kelsey had one last summer of her childhood, you could say. In a few more months, she would be heading off to college, and she was planning on attending Kansas State University. And she planned on studying animal medicine. She eventually wanted to become a veterinarian. So, one of the reasons that she had chosen to attend Kansas State is because they had this great marching band program, and Kelsey was very involved with the marching band in high school, and she wanted to continue that path throughout college. So Kelsey graduated from high school, and it's, like I said, that summer between high school and college. She's 18 years old with her whole life ahead of her. On June 2nd, 2007, Kelsey left her home to go to Target. This wasn't going to be a long shopping spree. She just wanted to buy her boyfriend a gift because it was their 6-month anniversary. So Kelsey tells her parents she'll be right back. She's just running to buy a gift. So Kelsey wouldn't be gone long. She actually had plans with her boyfriend at 7 p.m. that night, and she didn't head to Target until shortly before 7. So we know she really was just planning on running there and being back before 7. When 7 p.m. comes, her boyfriend shows up at her parents' house to pick her up. But Kelsey hasn't made it home yet. He kind of hangs out with the family, thinking she must just be running late. But half an hour goes by, and Kelsey's boyfriend and parents really begin to worry. So, the last time anyone had heard from Kelsey was when she had called her mom from inside Target around 7 p.m. But now no one can reach her on her cell. By the time 8 o'clock rolls around, everyone's really starting to freak out. It isn't like Kelsey to not return calls and texts. And they're worried that maybe she got into an accident and she couldn't pick up her phone. So they decide to drive to Target to see what is happening. And they kind of expect that they will pass her on their way there, pulled off to the side of the road, with a flat tire, or possibly because she had been involved in a fender bender. But they don't pass her along the way, and her car isn't in the parking lot. Kelsey's father, who also happens to be a police officer, is trying not to let his imagination get away with him. He has seen some pretty horrific things happen to young women, and he's just trying to stay positive and remain calm. instinct kicks in, and he begins trying to think of all the places she could have gone. The first thing he does is he goes around to all the local police departments, seeing if they had any reports of accidents. While her father is trying to track her down, the rest of her family is out searching for her. They're driving around, they're looking for her car, wondering if perhaps she couldn't find what she needed at Target, so she decided to go somewhere else. It is nighttime at this point, so it's dark. But while they are searching for her, they notice something across the street from Target. So right across the street from Target was a Macy's that was connected to the mall. And in that Macy's parking lot, they find Kelsey's car. The family rushes to the car, hoping to find Kelsey, but she isn't in the car. What they do find inside the car, however, makes absolutely no sense. Inside the car, they see the present that Kelsey had bought for her boyfriend at Target. And this seems weird to them, but then they notice her purse sitting in her car. And they realize in this moment something bad has happened. In no scenario would Kelsey leave her purse inside her car. When Kelsey's father is told about Kelsey's car being found abandoned in the Macy's parking lot, he is adamant that no one touches the car. Then he rushes to the Macy's parking lot to see his daughter's car, like for himself. And when he does, he notices something hanging out of the trunk, and his blood runs cold, thinking that maybe his daughter's body is inside that trunk. Police soon arrive on the scene, and the crime scene techs open the trunk, and everyone kind of breathes this huge sigh of relief when Kelsey's body is not found inside the trunk. While they are relieved, that feeling only lasts a moment before the fear starts to creep back in. If Kelsey isn't in the trunk, then where is she? So police immediately begin pulling surveillance from Target to see if they could find any clues that would help lead them to Kelsey. Investigators know that Kelsey had been at Target. They have the Target bag with the gift receipt that she had bought for her boyfriend. Plus, they know she talked to her mom while she was in Target. So Target is the first stop. And police are able to spot Kelsey as she arrives at Target at 6:54 p.m. Just 1 minute later, she is seen walking through the doors into the store. And because Target is like a large store, they have camera coverage over the entire store. So investigators are able to follow Kelsey's every move while inside the store. driver's side, walking behind the car. And then she gets into the car and leaves. But then one officer gasps as Kelsey gets into her car. "Go back," he says. "You have to go back. Did you see that?" So, this footage is not super clear. Her car is in the very far corner of the screen, and it's grainy and unclear, but one officer had picked something up as Kelsey was getting into the driver's side, and it had been missed by nearly every other officer because it was just a blur. But when someone points it out, you can't miss it. What the officer had noticed in those few seconds of blurry surveillance was a person, most likely a man, wearing a light top and dark pants, who rushed across the parking lot and attacked Kelsey. Within just a few seconds, he has her in the car, and they are driving away from the scene. You could hear a pin drop as it dawned on every single officer in that room what had happened. Someone had taken Kelsey, and this realization changed the investigation from a missing person to an abducted person. And police now knew the abduction had taken place at Target. So they decided to review the footage for a third time. This time, they know what they're looking for. A man in a light tank top and dark pants. And this time, they are able to pick up their suspect right away. And every single time Kelsey is seen on the surveillance from all of the various cameras, that man is standing behind her. Not super close, and she obviously isn't aware of this. So she goes to check out with her items, and this person leaves the store before Kelsey. She checks out, paying with a check, and then she heads out to her car at 7:10 p.m. She was only inside of Target for 15 minutes. Several security cameras showed her inside and outside the store. Now, because Target has a lot of video surveillance inside their store, they are able to see everything that is happening. It's being picked up on this footage. When the camera footage from the parking lot is analyzed, they notice someone moving quickly up to Kelsey as she's attempting to get in the car. This person gets inside the car with her, and when all of the footage is annexed, the person who is getting into the car in the parking lot is the one who was seen following her around Target, keeping his eyes on her, but also kind of keeping a distance. This was a younger man. They saw that he came from a pickup truck in the parking lot, so they know what vehicle he drives. And Kelsey Smith drove a 1987 Buick Regal. it was still light outside, and the parking lot was packed. No one saw anything. No one heard anything. The family was hopeful that maybe like the cell phone pings would be able to help, but they were not much help at all. The family created flyers to hand out with her photo and information on them. They know where she was last seen. They know what she was wearing when she was last seen. Kelsey was 5'6", 120 pounds, with long brown hair and brown eyes. And the family's moving quickly to try and find their daughter. They did everything they could to get the word out as fast as possible. They tried to get on every news channel they could. They knew the more people that were talking about Kelsey, the more likely she would be found. After Kelsey would go missing, a group of volunteers would gather to help search for her, and they called themselves Kelsey's Army. Police asked the media for help to spread the word about the suspect that was seen on the surveillance footage. They have a pretty good image of this guy, and then this couple sees the image of the suspect on the news, and they realize it looks an awful lot like their neighbor Jack. And they kind of laugh about it because their neighbor could not possibly be involved in a kidnapping. Jack is married and he has a child, and he's just a really nice guy who everyone loves. After the vehicle he's seen getting out of at Target was also described on the news, which was a 70s Chevy truck, the couple stops laughing because they realize it is their neighbor, and they immediately contacted the police. Jack is 26-year-old Edwin Roy Hall, and Jack is just his nickname. It's what most people know him as. Jack was married, and he had been married since he was 19 years old, and he had a 4-year-old son. And one of his neighbors said that he was just such a great guy. He's always helping people out in the neighborhood, and he seemed like a really great dad. So, police make some headway with the cell phone information. Kelsey's ID, cell phone, everything is missing with her. But police find out that Kelsey was in this specific area the last time that her phone pinged. And the community came out in droves to help search this area. The pickup truck that was driven by the suspect was found within 2 hours. And once they saw where her cell phone had pinged, they went out and they were able to find Kelsey within 45 minutes. When Kelsey's body was found, it was found in a depression in the ground. She was nude. She had a belt around her neck, and she had these like really weird patterns all over her, like sticks had been stripped of their leaves and then laid over the top of her. And they knew right away that they had a homicide to investigate. Police moved in on Edwin Hall quickly. All of his neighbors were calling in. They had his truck. They had impounded as evidence. The area where Kelsey's body was found was 20 miles east from the target where she had been abducted from. She was found in this wooded area along or near Longview Lake. There had been a couple that had been walking that day near where Kelsey's body was found, and they would later tell police that they had saw a young man coming out of the wooded area. And this young man had a blue duffel bag with him, and they saw him get into a truck. They described this truck to police, and it was the exact same type of truck that was seen at Target. This couple said that in the back of the truck there were a bunch of sticks that looked like they had been stripped of leaves. So police went around trying to track Edwin's movements. They know that just before 5 p.m., Edwin had eaten at a Mexican restaurant, and then he had left without paying. Then he went to Dillard's and walked around, and it is reported that he was looking for a gift for his wife. But they say he had no money on him, so it's possible this isn't true. He then enters Target just before 7 p.m., so they can for sure place him at Target. They know he's wandering around at Target, and he seems to fixate on Kelsey. He saw her while he was standing looking at like a jewelry display at the jewelry counter. So before they were able to catch up with him, he had seen a picture of himself, like a still from the surveillance, and a picture of his truck. So he sees that these are being broadcast all over the news. So he contacts a lawyer, and then the lawyer contacted police saying that he was going to turn himself in, but due to a scheduling issue with his lawyer, it would have to be later in the day. But he was going to come in. And he is declaring that he's not guilty. He wasn't involved in this. He said he was at Target, and he did leave his truck there, but he had nothing to do with Kelsey's kidnapping or her murder. And he said that he was very upset with the way that he was being portrayed in the media. He denied being involved, and he even goes to the media himself and gives some interviews over the phone while he was being held in jail. He declares his innocence. His wife, Athena, completely supported him in public. She told people she knew her husband, and she knows he was not capable of this. In the meantime, police are gathering information. The investigation goes smoothly for police. investigators were able to collect the Target footage that showed him following her around Target. They also had DNA evidence. They had his shorts that he was seen wearing at Target, and they had found her DNA in the zipper of those shorts. And it was less than a 1 in 280 billion chance that this DNA came from someone other than Kelsey Smith. They also found his DNA in her car, on the steering wheel and on the seatbelt. On July 23rd, 2008, he changed his plea from not guilty to 4 different charges. So at this point, he realizes he could be facing the death penalty, and the prosecution has said that they're gonna go for that. So he pleads guilty to kidnapping, rape, sodomy, and murder. The family was pretty shocked by his plea change, and the hearing was supposed to be like a change of venue hearing, so nobody realized he was going to change his plea, so the family is shocked. Kelsey's family gave their victim impact statements to him in court, and he ends up crying and apologizing. As part of his plea agreement, the family was able to learn more details about what Edwin had done that day. He said that he was at Target and he was standing near the jewelry counter when he noticed Kelsey, and he didn't know who she was, but he noticed her legs and he started following her around. He said when he saw her face, he thought she was about 12 years old. He had used this airsoft gun to get her to comply. He held it up against the back of her head while they were in the car, and she thought that it was real, so she did whatever he said. The medical examiner said that she could tell that because of the number of defensive wounds Kelsey had, she had fought hard against her attacker. Kelsey had fought for her life. So Jack, or Edwin's wife, couldn't believe that he was involved at all with this crime. The week that Kelsey was killed, he had charges brought against him for 2 counts of indecent, aggravated assault with a child, because he had assaulted a 14-year-old girl when he was 23. And the last time that he had been around this girl, he was at her house, and one of her family members punched him in the face. So then he had these charges brought against him, but the charges weren't brought until 3 to 4 years after the abuse had happened. So this guy has quite a past, and he even, the fact that he thought Kelsey was about 12 is very alarming. I guess Jack was adopted at the age of 7 by the Hall family, Don and Carol Hall, and they wanted to give him a loving home and a better When he was 12 years old, he ended up stealing his father's van, and at this point, he was placed under supervision by the courts. And then a year later, he stole a tape, a tape recorder, and $25 in cash, and again, he was placed under supervision, which means he has to stay in the school. He can't miss any days, his life is being supervised. In 1996, he threatened his sister with a knife, and he pled no contest to these charges, but at this point, he was removed from his family, the Halls, and he was placed into a juvenile correction facility for the next 4 years. He escaped from one in 1997, but then he was returned to it. On June 30th, 1999, Edwin Hall was formally discharged from the juvenile correction facilities. Within 1 year, he gets married to Althena, and in 2002, a man sued Edwin and his foster parents, stating that in 1995, Edwin had hit him in the head with a baseball bat, and that he had been suffering frequent headaches ever since. At the time, Edwin was 13, and the victim was 11 years old. This assault was dismissed, but as a result, there was some kind of court settlement. Then in 2004, he sexually abused a 14-year-old girl. And in 2007, he was charged for that abuse. So he had also been harassing a woman named Diane, and when she saw him in the news, she realized this was the same man who had given her trouble before the murder. She's walking around, and she's 4 blocks from Target when this guy starts yelling at her. And she turned to look, and it was Edwin Hall, and he was running up to her. And he said he wanted to tell her that she had a nice butt. But then he was following her around, and he would show up in the aisle she was walking down. And then some guy wants to know if he's bothering her. And she's just trying to get away from this creeper. But she never called police to tell them about this, encounter. Edwin Hall was the guy who was seen wandering around Target looking for a victim. Basically, he was hunting, which is so gross considering he thought Kelsey was still a very pretty young child. Edwin had a MySpace account result of the lack of pain. Even though his wife supported him in weird ways, she would have known he was capable of this. And when the trial began, she was creating all of these fake internet accounts to speak out against the media and police. And she would show up and visit him, and she just supported him through the entire trial. The Smith family spoke with the media and also to the court about the plea deal. It would bring an end to the case because he pled guilty, so he would not be able to appeal. And they said, quote, "It's all about her." And that was part of the reason for the plea, so we could get the focus off Edwin. He doesn't matter, Kelsey matters, is what her father said. He also said, quote, "Today is not really a victory, but it is justice. And justice isn't always fair. If it were fair, we would be able to get Kelsey back." End quote. For them, they say they are not moving on. They say you can't move on after the murder of your child. They will move forward, but never move on. They created the Kelsey Smith Foundation to educate young adults on how to avoid becoming a victim. They also spent time pushing for a change in laws, and now there is a Kelsey Smith Act, which requires phone service providers to hand over the location information for a person who could be abducted or in a situation where there is serious threat or harm. If there is any legitimate concern, they will release the information, location information. So they will release the location information for someone who is or may be in harm's way. And I think this is a great law because the cell phone companies have the technology to do this. They have the information at their fingertips, but most of them don't have a policy about how to handle these situations. When you call in and you get a customer service rep, they don't have the authority to do anything. And this is the case of Kelsey Ann Smith. Jack was sentenced to life in prison. And, with his plea, they didn't go over the death penalty. And he had to give police and the family information about the crime. So, anyway, thank you all for joining me so much. I appreciate your support so much. Please check out